Ashtata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotra Shata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासति गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगामाई यमुनामाई की भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की समवेत भक्त वृंद की गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guruvan Gauranga Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, verse number 11. Pranamayir doshan dharanabhischa kilvishan pratyaharena samsargan ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान् प्राणायामैर्दहेद्दोषान् धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान् प्राणायामैर्दहेद्दोषान् धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान्. प्राणायामैर्दहेद्दोषान् धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान्. धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान्. प्राणायामैर्दहेद्दोषान् धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान्. माताजी. प्राणायामैर्दहेद्दोषान् धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान्. प्राणायामैर्दहेद्दोषान् धारणाभिश्च किल्बिषान् प्रत्याहारेण संसर्गान् ध्यानेनानीश्वरान् गुणान् pranayamaihi. By practice of pranayama, the hate one can eradicate doshan, contaminations. Dharanabhihi, by concentrating the mind. Cha, and kilbishan, sinful activities. Pratyaharena, by restraining the senses. Samsargan, material association. Dhyanena, by meditating. Anishwaran gunan, the modes of material nature. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: by practicing the process of pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of his psychological condition and physiological condition, and by concentrating the mind, one can be free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association, and by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from the three modes of material attachment. Purport: according to Ayurvedic medicinal science, the three items kapha, pitta and vayu, flame, bile and air, maintain the physiological condition of the body. Modern medical science does not accept this physiological analysis as valid, but the ancient Ayurvedic process of treatment is based upon these items. Ayurvedic treatment concerns itself with the cause of these three elements, which are mentioned in many places in the Bhagavatam as the basic conditions of the body. Here it is recommended that by practicing the breathing process of pranayama, one can be released from the contamination created by the principal physiological elements. By concentrating the mind, one can become free from sinful activities, and by withdrawing the senses, one can be free himself from material association. Ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position where he is no longer affected by three modes of material nature. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman. Sagunan samatityardan brahma bhuyata kalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti Yoga. But the practice of Bhakti Yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti Yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti Yoga and other yogas have their ultimate goal, the same personality of Godhead, but one is practical and others are difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentrating and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is called Samadhi. That's ends the purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshur Unmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासवती गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So the translation is, by practicing the process of pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of his physiological condition, and by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association, and by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from the three modes of material nature. So the current chapter, chapter number 28, the name of this chapter is Kapila's Instructions on Execution of Devotional Service. That is the name of the chapter, right? Just like the previous chapter, even this chapter name was actually given a little bit different by the previous acharyas. The previous acharyas say the name of this chapter is Kapila describes Ashtanga Yoga. But Prabhupada gives a name, Kapila's Instructions on Execution of Devotional Service. Right? Like in the previous 27 also, Prabhupada changed the name of the chapter. That was what? Understanding the material nature. But actually the other Acharya says, Kapila describes liberation. Right? So similarly, here also we can see that, it's kind of obvious that what Prabhupada wants to emphasize here, that what should be the learning from this chapter, which is devotional service. Now, but however, if you look at this verse and the previous verses, clearly Kapila is talking about Ashtanga Yoga, right? I mean, that is all the process. Even in the current verse, you can see he's explaining about pranayama, dharana, and samadhi. So, now the question is, what is this chapter describing? Is this chapter describing Ashtanga Yoga or Bhakti Yoga? Or is this chapter describing Ashtanga Yoga mixed with Bhakti Yoga? Right? So now if we say that this is Ashtanga Yoga mixed with Bhakti Yoga, now the question arises, does it mean that is this practice pure devotional service or is it mixed? If it is mixed devotional service, then why is Lord Kapila not teaching pure devotional service? Why is he talking about the Ashtanga Yoga, which is not a part of Bhakti Yoga, obviously, right? So that is what we will, study, or I will be explaining a little bit today. So if you look at the translation also, there is a statement. It says, for every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti Yoga. But the practice of Bhakti Yoga is easier for this age. So here we can see that even though Kapila is explaining about Ashtanga Yoga, it's very obvious and very clear, but Prabhupada, or even in the previous speakers in the previous classes of Bhagavatam also, we acknowledge that, but at the same time we emphasize on the limbs of bhakti, which is chanting and hearing. It is a little bit different. The result is same, but it is different. It is not the same, right? One is Ashtanga Yoga, another is Bhakti Yoga. So, and generally, whenever we come across this topic of Ashtanga Yoga, either in Bhagavatam or when you're discussing Bhagavad Gita, generally we see that the devotees, they immediately reject it, saying that this is not practical. And also we give the example of Arjuna, how Arjuna rejected the Ashtanga Yoga process, right? And lay more emphasis on the direct practice of bhakti principles, the 9 devotional services, Shravanam, Smaranam, and all those aspects. So now the question is Ashtanga Yoga completely rejected in Bhakti Yoga practice? Is Ashtanga Yoga completely rejected in Bhakti Yoga practice? So that's the question. If you look at In the purport also, if you look at the goal of Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, both has the same goal actually. It's a liberation, going back to Godhead, right? So that's at least the goal is same, but the process is different, right? Now, before we answer this question, let me ask you a different question. Is Ashtanga Yoga, is it a Purva Paksha or Uttara Paksha to Vedanta? Because we are the followers of Vedanta, correct? We belong to the Vedanta school. So, is it an opposing philosophy or a complying philosophy? What is it? What do you think? Is Ashtanga Yoga, is it a Purva Paksha or Uttara Paksha to Vedanta? It's the same. So it is not an opposing philosophy. It's the same. I mean, that is why if you look at the previous acharyas also, everybody accepted the Yoga Sutras. No acharya rejected Yoga Sutras. They all accepted, but of course they might have said that it is not practical, it is not necessary, and all those things are there. But in general, if you just look at the Yoga Sutras, they're all accepted. I mean, they're all bona fide, and all the previous acharyas, they accepted it, right? So that should be very clear. And the next is, if you look at the Ashtanga Yoga process, there are mainly 8 limbs. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, right? So Yama means discipline and restraint. Niyama means positive observances. I will tell you what they are. Asana means posture. Pranayama means breathing exercises. Pratyahara means controlling the senses or sense withdrawal. Dharana means focusing the mind or concentration. Dhyana, meditation, and Samadhi is enlightenment. And if you look at the previous verses spoken by Lord Kapila, actually he is going in this order. If you see the second verse of this chapter, what is the second verse? He says, one should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. So here you can see, one should execute his prescribed duties. He is talking about Varnashrama. Prescribed duties are Varnashrama, right? So that is Yama. Basically it's a discipline. That's how you discipline the society in general, and the same discipline is applicable even to a Ashtanga yogi. And then, Lord Kapila talks about non-violence and all those practices that belongs to Niyama. And then the 5th verse he talks about Asana and Pranayama. Of course, even this verse talks about Pranayama. It kind of mixed some verses, it kind of combines 2 things. And Dharana, verse number 6, how Kapila is telling to fix your prana. And Dhyana, verse number 7, how to fix your mind on the Lord. And this verse actually talks about Samadhi. So in this way, Lord Kapila is very clearly talking about Ashtanga Yoga and systematically presenting these 8 limbs. Now when it is coming to Bhakti Yoga, now are all these limbs practiced in Bhakti Yoga, or some of the limbs are omitted? So if you carefully observe these limbs and compare to our devotional practice, the last 3, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, actually we practice these things. Like, in the Nectar of Instruction, verse number 8, where, Rupa Goswami discusses about 5 stages of remembrance of the Lord, Smaranam, Dharana, Dhyana, Dhruvanusmriti, and Samadhi. They're actually exactly the same limbs. There's no difference. It's even the words actually matching, right? Dharana, Dhyana, of course there are Smaranam and Dhruvanusmriti, which is added, but you can see it's exactly similar. There is no difference. These limbs we exactly practice. And what are these limbs? Smaranam. What is Smaranam? Means recollection. You remember the Lord, but it's broken. It's not continuous. What is Dharana? Absorption. Means there are less breaks. Dhyana, meditation on the Lord's name, form, etc. Dhruvanusmriti means constant remembrance without any break. And Samadhi, the trance, the highest stage or the highest perfection of remembrance of the Lord. So these are very much same. Now the question is, what about the first 5? What about Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, and Pratyahara? Are they not applicable? Do we not follow them? Do we reject them? And is it not applicable to Bhakti Yoga? So let's try to analyze this, okay? So the first is Yama. What is Yama? Yama means Ahimsa, Satya, Asateya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Yamaha. This is the definition of Yama. Non-violence, truthfulness, refrain from stealing, celibacy, and renunciation. Niyama. What is niyama? Saucha, Santosha, Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhani, Niyamaha. Cleanliness, contentment, austerity, study of scriptures, and devotion to God. Pratyahara, control of senses. So now, is a devotee non-violent? Is a devotee truthful? Is a devotee restrained from stealing? Is a devotee celibate and renunciant? Right? So can we say that devotee is also practicing yama? Yeah, he's practicing yama, right? I mean, he's controlling all these things. Now, is a devotee clean? Is a devotee content? Is a devotee austere? Does a devotee spend time in reading scriptures? Does devotee have devotion to God? And does devotee control the senses? Yeah. So can I say that a devotee is having niyama and pratyahara also? So we are following, right? In Bhakti Yoga also, we are following these things. Even though apparently we see that we are rejecting, but we are not rejecting actually. We are exactly following what it is mentioned here by the Yoga Sutras. Right? So now the question is, okay, now we are practicing all these things. So all these items, are these items cultivated by a Bhakti Yogi? The answer is yes. Now the question is, okay, if a Bhakti Yogi is practicing these items, are these items the limbs of Bhakti? Is non-violence, truthfulness, restraint from stealing, celibacy, renunciation, are they limbs of Bhakti? But they're not directly mentioned, right? Like in the 64 limbs of Bhakti, there is nowhere to say that practice non-violence. It's not clear, it's not directly stated. As a practice it is there, but it's not directly mentioned as a limbs of Bhakti, right? We don't separately practice that. The non-violence is like a consequence. Like, once you do devotion, it's like a consequence. But we don't separately practice that limb like that, you see? So, in that sense, actually, these are not directly limbs of Bhakti. So now, okay, before I answer this question, let's see where is it mentioned. Okay, previous verses I have given from Yoga Sutras. Now, where in the devotional literature mentioned or recommended these items? Where is it recommended, all these items? Can anyone remember? Where are all these items recommended in the Bhakti Yoga literature? Nectar of instruction, right? Because nectar of instructions, that is what, right? Urge to speak, tolerate the urge to speak, mind's demands, anger, urges of tongue, belly, genitals, right? So these are all, the first three verses exactly talking about yama and niyama, actually, pratyahara, right? So these are the same things. So these are actually, all the principles are same. These are all same to compare to yama, niyama and pratyahara. Now what about asana and pranayama? This is the most controversial, right? So this is where we see no pranayama, not required, right? And asana, not required, right? So this is where things become controversial. So let's first define what is asana. Sthira sukham asanam. Posture should be steady and comfortable. That is simple definition of asana. What is pranayama? Gati vichedaha pranayamaha. Regulation of incoming and outgoing breath is called pranayama. So let me ask you a question. Is there in any devotional literature where asana and pranayama is recommended? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is there any or let me ask you in a different way. Did ever any of our previous acharyas recommended practicing asana and pranayama for a bhakti yogi? It may be mentioned in scripture, but did any acharya recommend that? Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 135, Hari Bhakti Vilasa Ara Bhagavatamrita Dashama Tipani Ara Dashama Charita. Some of the books compiled by Sri Sanatan Goswamis were the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Dashama Tipani and Dashama Charita. In the translation, Prabhupada says, in the fifth Vilas, one is instructed how to make a place to sit for meditation, and there are descriptions of breathing exercises, meditation and worship of Saligram Shila, representation of Lord Vishnu. So here you can see one reference where one of our previous acharyas himself is recommending. But of course, you can say that, see, even though its recommendation is there, But Sanatana Nath Goswami is not telling that you sit and do pranayama for 1,000 years. I mean, it's just a small aspect, right? It's not like a full elaborate pranayama process how a Ashtanga yogi does for thousands of years. That is not what is being recommended here. But you can see that there is some reference to asana and pranayama where it is shown that it's tend to be helpful. And you can practically experience yourself also. Like before you chant, if you do a little bit pranayama, you can see the difference. It is helpful to control your mind and so that you can focus your mind more on that, right? So now, but one thing which is clear is that these are actually not direct limbs of bhakti. That's very clear, right? So then why are these, why to practice those items which are not directly related to the bhakti angas? And if we, let's say if we do that, then will it be considered as our devotional service, not pure devotion, but a mixed devotion? That's what the obvious questions will be raising in our mind, that if we are practicing these items, then will it be a mixed devotional service? And why to practice those things which are not directly limbs of bhakti? So, the explanation for this is actually given by, in Bhakti Sandarbha, by Srila Jiva Goswami, in verse number 217. Sangasiddha Bhakti, Bhakti by association with Bhakti, refers to Jnana and Karma practices as minor parts of Bhakti, though devoid of Bhakti by nature. They are not Bhakti, they don't have any Bhakti in them. Though they are devoid of Bhakti by nature, they are included in Bhakti when these elements are fixed as Bhakti assistants. They are not directly Bhakti Yoga, but they assist in some situations in smoothly practicing our Bhakti Yoga. And Jiva Goswami gives an example. For instance, he quotes this verse from the 11th canto, 3rd chapter, 23. A sincere disciple should learn to dissociate the mind from everything material and positively cultivate association with the spiritual master and other saintly devotees. He should be merciful to those in an inferior position to him, cultivate friendship with those on an equal level, and meekly serve those in a higher spiritual position. Thus, he should learn to deal properly with all living entities, living beings. So here what we see is that just be a good person. It's like good qualities, right? These are like, moral values, what he's teaching here. So in this verse, bhakti is a process and detachment is an element of jnana which assists. Right? That's what it's telling. Disassociate your mind is basically recommending for detachment. But detachment is not a limb of bhakti. Right? Then why are you recommending this? Though not bhakti in itself, it becomes bhakti by association with bhakti, because it's assisting bhakti. Right? So, in this way, even though these limbs are mentioned, and these are kind of little bit relevance is there, but they are not dominating. It's ultimately which is a devotion which is dominating element. And these things, even though they are there in a minute presence, they are also just there to assist, especially a sadhaka, in performing his devotional service properly. And I would like to quote one work of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he talks about these 8 limbs of yoga. The domination over material nature attained in the practice of yoga is only a temporary result. In that position, the ultimate result may be far off, and time and again impediments are observed. In the path of yoga, there are hindrances at every step. First, at the time of practicing yama and niyama, religiosity has awakened, means varnashrama system, I told, right? And the result, as a result of attaining this insignificant result, one becomes known as religious minded, even though no attempt has been made to achieve prema. Second, during the long period of practicing asana and pranayama, one achieves a long life free of diseases by controlling the breathing. But if there is still no constant connection with prema, then one's long life free of diseases becomes a source of trouble. Third, although by process of pratyahara, one achieves control of the senses, if prema is lacking, that is called dry or insignificant renunciation. The reason is that for attainment of the ultimate goal, enjoyment and renunciation give equal results, unless renunciation simply makes one stone-hearted. Fourth, during dhyana, dharana and samadhi, even if material thoughts are removed, if prema is not awakened, the living entity loses its individuality. If the understanding, I am the Brahman, does not awaken the pure love, then the results in destruction, that results in destruction of his existence. Therefore, please consider the ultimate goal of yoga is excellent, but the path is full of difficulties. You are a Vaishnava as well as a yogi, therefore you can understand my words without bias. So in this way, the ultimate goal of yoga is basically to develop the law of Godhead. And even in Ashtanga Yoga also, we can see Lord Kapila, even though he's explaining Ashtanga Yoga, but there is heavy bhakti, in the process. And even though, these two processes seems to be apparently exclusive or nothing to do with each other, but actually there is a lot of similarities, and many of the principles does apply to Bhakti Yoga also. Especially the Yama Niyama and all this process where Rupa Goswami himself is recommending for a Bhakti Yoga practitioner. Especially for those who are beginning in the Bhakti Yoga, these things will help. Regulating one's senses, controlling one's, eating habits, controlling all, one's senses. All these things are very much helpful. But one must understand that even though these are not direct limbs of Bhakti, but because they are used for the ultimate purpose as an assistants in the Bhakti Yoga process, they also become devotionalized, and as a Bhakti Yoga, we should not neglect these regulative principles, and which is common in both Ashtanga or Bhakti Yoga process. In the name of rejecting the Ashtanga Yoga, that does not mean that we just reject our regulative life. Regulative life is very much important in the devotional life also. So these verses must be taken in that spirit. So that is why, even though there is a mention of Ashtanga Yoga, but actually what Lord Kapila is explaining is actually pure devotional service. That is why, if you remember, in Nectar of Devotion also, if you see the first paragraph of Nectar of Devotion, actually Prabhupada starts by quoting Lord Kapila's instructions. If Lord Kapila's instructions are not pure devotional service, then why would Prabhupada quote as the very first line of Nectar of Devotion, which is describing the pure devotion, right? So that is the intent. So we must understand all these things in this proper context, and have a proper understanding of all these principles, even though we are discussing all these things, that how are these relevant to our practice as well. Okay, so thus I would like to end my class. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you very much for your nice presentation. And I have some reflection on this and a question. So ultimately, any process will begin by, if you ask someone, what is your goal? What is your intention? And right there, at the moment that you decide or choose to, let's say the goal is Krishna Prema, then immediately you just, all these things to make sense to you, because it's there in the scriptures. And yes, but someone who actually takes the other side and get distracted from that. So then my question will be, if a new devotee or someone who's just beginning to the process of Krishna consciousness, let's say the way Prabhupada presents it, the way the system is being, the way we're following, he says, oh, okay, so I saw that there are a lot of things. Actually, it's not so bad. And they can spend maybe 2 or 3 hours following a particular item over there, like, let's say, pranayama, 1 hour or 2 hours, or, just yoga exercise for that sake. So what would you recommend in that case?
Okay, so when a new devotee takes up to Krishna consciousness, what is the very first book we recommend usually? At least I was told to recommend. The first is the Nectar of Instruction, right? Because Nectar of Instruction is all about that. So Nectar of Instruction is very much important, especially for a new devotee, because that is where there is a lot of talk about the rules and regulations. So whatever the goal, in principle, whatever yama, niyama and pratyahara is meant, that is already achieved when one follows the the instructions of Rupa Goswami, Nectar of Instructions. The only problem comes when the discussion comes about asana and pranayama. That's the only where there could be a difference of opinion, and that is where some devotees may say it is like 100% not required, or some may say no, you have to do it, and that is where things becomes in a gray area. So that is especially with asana and pranayama. But that is why it is mentioned that in the beginning stages of bhakti, because see, when Jiva Goswami is discussing about this Sangha Siddha Bhakti, there is three things. One is that there is Arop Siddha Bhakti, Sangha Siddha Bhakti, and Swarup Siddha Bhakti. Swarup Siddha Bhakti is a pure 9 devotional services, nothing other than that, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, that's it. But in Sangha Siddha Bhakti and the other Arop Siddha Bhakti, what happens is that it is allowed to use of jnana and karma only minute, not a dominating thing, only in a minute way, which could help the practitioner sadhaka. For example, here it is mentioned, right? So detachment, practicing detachment. It's actually detachment is actually part of the jnana yoga process. It's not like really a bhakti yoga thing, but it helps the bhakti yoga also. But now specifically coming to pranayama and asana, again, this is something which I can say this could be my personal recommendation, right? So that is where what I would say is that, like, asana, let's say asana, right? So asana is very simple. Like if you look at Sanatana Goswami and what he recommended in Hari Bhakti Vilas, he actually mentioned that sit in a proper asana. Don't just sleep, bend, just sit properly, right? That is important. Even Prabhupada, you might have seen that, he might be instructing sit properly. I'm not telling that asana means no, you go and do like 50 asanas. No, that's not what it is meant here. It is simply meant that sit properly and in a steady position. And pranayama. So again, if you think that it is a little bit helpful, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes before you start your chanting, just do that. There's nothing harm in that. I'm not telling you to like 5 hours of pranayama. That is not being recommended here. So when these things are done in that spirit, I don't think that there should be any problem. Does anyone else want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, like I blurted out during the class, well, you asked the question. Just a couple of verses ago, Prabhupada said that if there's that position, swasti samasana, and if you sit in that, he said, it helps to concentrate the mind on the Supreme. Yeah, so it's right there in this purport. So
So in that spirit, we can take some of these principles which will be helpful for our bhakti. But we don't need to go an extreme like Ashtanga Yoga.
The word asana, I don't know a lot about Sanskrit, but I think it means a seat, right? So where did all this other stuff come from? If the word asana means seat, right? Asana, that's the third limb, right? So where did all these different poses come from?
That is not mentioned anywhere, actually. That is not mentioned in Yoga Sutras. See, what happens is that not everything is documented. Not everything is documented because only the principles are documented. The practices, it goes by the tradition. So it's an oral tradition. Just like we have an oral tradition, they have also a tradition where those things are preserved. And that is why, sometimes you may see 2 Ashtanga yogis have a different style also. So those are details, how they do that. And that could vary.
Are they a complete concoction or there's some validity to them?
I mean, they claim their own lineages and all those things, but, we don't know.
It's like, isn't there like something with Devasa Muni is?
Yeah. There could be so many but this is just a principle. What Yoga Sutra talks just is a principle, that's it. But how you do that and also things can vary.
But in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes both the seat, type of seat made of a certain type of straw on a deer skin, and he also mentions posture, that you should sit in a certain way, stare at your nose, tip of the nose. So both things are there. The type of seat, asana, just like we have vyasasana, it's the seat for vyas, but also the posture is mentioned by Krishna specifically in the 6th chapter. Not that you just sit any way you want. You make a certain type of seat and you sit in a particular type of way. So, and all of these things are just common senses. Prabhupada said, for instance, in the discussion of Dhritarashtra leaving home and finally self-immolating, creating a fire from within his body and burning his body to ashes. Prabhupada said, in previous ages, any gentleman knew how to do that.
Yeah.
So it's not something wonderful or, it's just
Yeah.
the age that we're living in. This age, those things are not taught.
Correct.
But in previous ages, these things were all taught. How to make it a particular seat, what posture to sit in, and how to develop this particular type of, we could say, mystic power where you could self-immolate if necessary. So in this age, those things are not stressed, they're not taught.
Yeah.
And all of that is incorporated in the current Bhakti Yoga system that we're being taught by Prabhupada.
Yeah.
As he said, he does say sit properly, but at the same time, if you can't sit in that position, it doesn't mean that you can't make progress.
That is true.
Because the main thing is concentrating on, Prabhupada said, when somebody said to Prabhupada once, Prabhupada, when I chant, I think, and Prabhupada said, there's no thinking, just chant and hear.
Yeah.
Chant Hare Krishna and hear Hare Krishna. So if we take that to heart and we do that, it doesn't really matter whether you're sitting on a chair or on a mat or,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
That is
Chant Hare Krishna and hear Hare Krishna.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for coming for Bhagavatam class. Nitya Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.